The arena was humming with a restless energy, a sound distinct to wrestling crowds when they are waiting for something, though they aren't quite sure what. It was late in the evening of January 2025, a time when the industry felt like it was holding its breath. The show had been solid, the matches technical and precise, but there was a palpable void hanging over the ring. It was the feeling of a kingdom without a true ruler, a narrative spinning its wheels. You could see it in the posture of the fans in the front row. They were checking their phones, their eyes wandering from the Titantron to the empty ramp, searching for a spark that had been missing for over a year. The commentary team spoke in hushed tones about the main event, trying to manufacture suspense, but the air was thin. The current champion stood in the ring, holding the belt high, but the applause was polite, not primal. It was the quiet tragedy of a combat sport when the emotional connection has been severed. The crowd wanted to believe. They wanted to lose their minds, but the magic trick wasn't working. The lights in the rafters buzzed, casting long, static shadows across the canvas. It was a moment of perfect, suffocating stagnation. And then the feed cut. Not a glitch, but a deliberate, heavy darkness that swallowed the arena whole. The polite applause died instantly, replaced by a confused murmur that rolled through the 20,000 souls in attendance like a wave. The screens went black, the house lights died. The only illumination came from the thousands of cell phone flashlights suddenly igniting in the stands, creating a galaxy of artificial stars. The air pressure seemed to drop. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy. It was the sound of a vacuum forming, pulling all the oxygen out of the room, preparing for an explosion that would rewrite history. It began with a sound that wasn't music, but a heartbeat. A low, bass-heavy thrum that vibrated through the floorboards and up, through the soles of everyone's shoes. Thump, 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 thump. The giant LED screens cracked to life, not with a logo, but with the visual of molten rock splitting apart. Then, the violin struck a single, sorrowful note that twisted into a war cry. The ramp didn't just light up, it caught fire. But this wasn't the pyrotechnics of the past. This was a wall of digital and physical flame, an inferno rising to meet the occasion. From the center of the blaze, a silhouette emerged. She stepped out, and time seemed to decelerate. She wasn't wearing the gear she left in. She was clad in upgraded flame armor, plates of burnished crimson and gold that caught the firelight, making her look less like a wrestler and more like a mythical entity forged in a volcano. As she paused at the top of the stage, LEDs embedded in her pauldrons cracked with simulated lightning, syncing with the thunderous crescendo of her new theme. The crowd didn't cheer immediately. For 1 second, they gasped a collective intake of breath that signaled genuine shock. Then the eruption happened. It was a wall of noise so dense it distorted the audio feed. Fans were leaping over barricades, clutching their heads, screaming not just a name but a feeling of vindication. She stood there, stoic. The Queen of Ash returned to her kingdom. She didn't smile. She slowly panned her head from left to right, surveying the chaos she had caused. This wasn't just a return, it was a reclamation. The pyro shot upward, piercing the darkness, and as the camera zoomed in, you could see the reflection of the fire in her eyes. 2025 had just officially begun. While the arena was dissolving into euphoria, a very different story was unfolding inside the squared circle. The camera cut to the current champion, the woman who had been holding the division together with grit and determination for the last 12 months. She wasn't looking at the fans. She was staring up the ramp, her knuckles white as she gripped the ropes. In the storytelling of professional wrestling, we often focus on the return, but we rarely focus on the displacement. The champion's face told a complex story of fear, respect, and agonizing insecurity. She had spent a year building her legacy, convincing the world that she was the summit of the mountain. In the span of 30 seconds, with one entrance, she had been rendered a supporting character in her own movie. You could see her chest heaving, not from physical exhaustion, but from the sudden crushing weight of the narrative shift. She took a half step back, an involuntary retreat that the cameras caught perfectly. It was a subtle admission of dominance. The referee, usually invisible in these moments, was frozen too, caught between the procedure of the match and the spectacle of the return. Backstage, we can only imagine the monitors flickering, the locker room crowded around small screens, silence falling over the roster. The hierarchy had been shattered. Every storyline, every planned feud, every meticulously crafted rivalry was now obsolete. The variable that no one had accounted for was walking down the ramp with the slow, predatory gait of a lioness. The champion lowered the title belt from above her head to her waist, and finally, let it hang loosely by her side. It was a visual surrender of the spotlight, a subconscious acknowledgement that the belt was just leather and gold, but the woman walking toward her was power. Before she even reached the steel steps, the moment had transcended the physical building. In 2025, the arena is only the epicenter. The shockwave travels through the digital nervous system of the world. Social media timelines, which had been sluggish and cynical all night, suddenly synchronized. The clip of her silhouette emerging from the flames was ripped, uploaded, and shared millions of times within minutes. It wasn't just wrestling fans reacting. It was pop culture absorbing a moment of high drama. Hashtags rocketed to the #1 spot globally, displacing political news and celebrity gossip. The commentary on the internet shifted from analysis to pure emotion. People were posting videos of their own reactions, grown men crying in their living rooms, groups of friends at watch parties, jumping on couches, spilling drinks in pure delirium. The image of the flame armor became an instant icon, fan art being generated in real time, memes spreading the look of shock on the champion's face. This is the modern metric of a legend, the ability to stop the infinite scroll. For a few hours, the fragmented attention span of the world focused on one singular walk down a ramp. Critics who had claimed the sport was past its prime were forced to recant. The sheer aesthetic beauty of the return of lightning, the armor, the timing forced even the cynics to pause. It was a reminder that spectacle, when done with genuine emotional weight, still has the power to unite millions of people in a shared gasp. The video wasn't just viral, it was cultural currency. She hadn't just returned to a roster, she had inserted herself back into the global consciousness, proving that absence, when calculated correctly, is the most powerful presence of all. To understand the magnitude of the fire, we have to understand the cold that preceded it. The script of her return is written in the ink of her departure. 2 years prior, she hadn't lost a match, she had lost herself. Remember the night she walked away not with a bang, but with a whisper. She had left the boots in the ring, a traditional signal of retirement, but it felt unresolved. There were rumors of injury, of burnout, of a spirit crushed by the relentless grind of the road. She had vanished into a self-imposed exile. No interviews, no podcasts, no cryptic tweets, just silence. In an era of constant oversharing, her privacy became a myth. Fans had spent months dissecting her old matches, looking for signs of the breakdown, trying to pinpoint the moment the light went out of her eyes. That mystery built a reservoir of longing. The wrestling world realized they hadn't just lost a performer. They had lost an artist who painted with violence and charisma. The flashbacks woven into the minds of the audience as she stood on the apron were heavy. We remembered the injuries, the knee brace, the taped shoulder, the concussion scares. We remembered the pressure of carrying the company on her back during the difficult years. This return wasn't just about wrestling again. It was about survival. It was the end of her rehabilitation arc that no one saw. She had rebuilt her body in the shadows so she could burn bright in the light. The armor she wore wasn't just a costume. It was a symbol of the protection she needed to build around herself to survive the industry that almost consumed her. As she stepped through the ropes, the camera caught details that the wide shots missed. The new armor was intricate, heavy. You could see the way it weighed on her shoulders, a physical representation of the expectations she was carrying. The lights of the arena reflected off the metallic scales, hiding the scars underneath. She moved differently now. The frenetic, desperate energy of her youth was gone, replaced by a terrifying economy of motion. Every step was calculated. She walked to the center of the ring, the lightning effects on her gear slowly fading as the house lights raised slightly. The music cut. This is the most dangerous moment in wrestling, the transition from spectacle to reality. The pyro smoke still hung in the air, creating a haze that made the ring look like a dreamscape. She stood face to face with the champion, but she didn't look at her. She looked at the crowd. She took a deep breath, and you could see her ribcage expand against the armor. It was the first sign of humanity we had seen. That breath grounded the moment. It told us that beneath the superhero presentation, there was a woman whose heart was racing, who was terrified that maybe the world had moved on. but the deafening chant of her name washed over her, and for a split second, the mask slipped. A tiny, almost imperceptible quiver of her lip betrayed the emotion. She was home. The physical toll of the training camps, the mornings waking up in pain, the doubt it all crystallized into this single posture of strength. She was a statue come to life, and the arena revered her for it. The microphone was offered to her, but she didn't take it. In a world of scripted promos and rehearsed catchphrases, her refusal to speak was deafening. She simply stared at the champion. The tension in the ring was thick enough to choke on. The champion, usually so vocal and brash, was rendered mute by the presence of the veteran. This was a clash of eras. The champion represented the athletic, fast-paced, social media-driven style of 2025. The returnee represented the myth, the storytelling, the psychology, the grit. Without saying a word, she raised a gloved hand and pointed not at the title belt, but at the champion's heart. It was a cryptic gesture. Was she saying the champion lacked heart? Was she warning her that this business would break it? The crowd tried to decipher the riddle in real time. The commentary team stayed silent, letting the imagery breathe. This wasn't a challenge for a match. It was a challenge for the soul of the division. The champion stepped forward, trying to assert dominance, getting in the legend's face. The legend didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply tilted her head, observing the champion like a scientist observing a specimen. It was a power dynamic shift so subtle, yet so violent that it made the audience uncomfortable. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and brilliant, creating a suspense that no amount of trash talk could ever achieve. It was the realization that the champion was fighting for her spot, while the legend was fighting for something much more abstract, her legacy. Cut away from the ring for a moment, in the mind's eye, to the people who know the woman behind the armor. Somewhere in a private viewing box, or perhaps at home watching on a delay, is a family. They are the ones who saw the days when she couldn't get out of bed. They saw the ice packs, the tears, the discussions about whether it was worth risking her health to do this one more time. To the world, she is a goddess of fire. To them, she is fragile. This narrative layer adds a tragic beauty to the return. Every bump she takes, every time she hits the mat, they wince. They know the cost of the pop. The audience sees the glory, but the family sees the sacrifice. As she stands in the ring, basking in the adoration of 20,000 strangers, there is a disconnect. She belongs to the world again, and that means she belongs less to them. The camera catches a glimpse of a child in the front row, wearing her old merchandise, crying tears of joy. That child represents the innocence of the fandom, but the story being told is one of adult consequences. The wrestler looks at the child, then back to the champion. You can see the resolve harden in her eyes. She has made her choice. She has chosen the roar of the crowd over the safety of silence. It is a noble, tragic, and heroic decision. The family watches, holding their breath, knowing that the ride has started again, and there is no getting off until the wheels fall off. The standoff couldn't last forever. It's the champion, driven by insecurity and the need to prove she wasn't just a placeholder. Through the first strike, a sharp forearm to the face of the legend, the crowd gasped. It was sacrilege. The legend's head snapped back, her hair whipping across the armor. The champion stepped back, shocked by her own audacity, waiting for the retaliation. But the legend didn't strike back. She slowly turned her head back to center. She wiped a smudge of sweat from her lip, and then she laughed. It wasn't a villainous laugh. It was a laugh of pure, adrenaline-fueled joy. She had missed the pain. She had missed the contact. That physical jolt was the confirmation she needed that she was actually there, that this wasn't a dream. She dropped into a fighting stance, a throwback to her classic style, but modified. She moved with a darker fluidity. She parried the champion's next strike and delivered a simple, devastating takedown. No wasted movement. She didn't play to the crowd. She focused entirely on the dismantling of her opponent. The message was clear. The flashy moves of the new generation meant nothing against the mastery of the old guard. She controlled the ring not with speed but with gravity. She was the anchor, and everything else revolved around her. The crowd was seeing a masterclass in timing, realizing that while the roster had gotten faster in her absence, she had gotten smarter. The segment ended not with a finisher, but with a retreat. The champion rolled out of the ring, clutching her pride, realizing she was outmatched mentally. The legend stood alone in the center of the ring as her music hit again. The pyro went off one last time, bathing her in red light. But as the show prepared to fade to black, the camera pushed in for a final close-up. This is where the story twists. We expected to see triumph. We expected to see a hunger for the belt. But as she looked at the championship lying on the floor where the champion had dropped it in her haste, the legend didn't pick it up. She stepped over it. Her eyes met the lens, breaking the fourth wall. The expression wasn't one of conquest. It was one of warning. The twist wasn't that she was back to win the title. The realization hit the audience slowly as the screen faded. She wasn't here to reclaim the division. She was here to burn it down so something new could grow from the ashes. She wasn't the savior. She was the necessary destruction. The viral moment wasn't a happy return. It was the beginning of a reckoning. The flame armor wasn't for show, was because she intended to walk through fire and drag everyone else with her.